Hey, Freddie, can you hear me okay?
Hey, Darren.
Hey, how's your day going aside from having to talk to media? Because, hey, not everyone loves the media.
I love it. I
Cool.
love talking. I love talking about myself.
Well, first question I have is, are you Freddie to everybody, or is it once you like them, you become Fred?
No, I hate being called Fred.
Okay, so you're Freddie to everyone.
Fred. I mean, yeah. For some reason, it's like some people are called Christopher. I hate being called Chris.
Well,
But,
Freddie, thank you for taking the time,
yeah.
and congratulations on your solo album. Obviously, I first found out about you from the vaccines, the big albums, love that kind of stuff. But it's really cool to see that you're taking chances with this solo album, that you were working with people outside of your comfort zone, the story of you moving to Mexico outside of your comfort zone. It's really interesting on a lot of levels. Was it as difficult of an album to make as I think it was?
Um, I say not really,
Oh,
but I found in my like artistic life that the difficulty is the kind of personal life and the personal challenges and the personal journey.
mhm.
And if I focus on that, then the art is part of it is just a given. It's like a byproduct. Because I've made albums in the past super challenging to make and really feel like a massive slog, but also kind of probably in some ways testament to the idea that you cannot, like, creativity is not necessarily like a linear thing.
Oh yeah, right.
Yeah, you don't always get out what you put in. Some people put in 8 hours practice a day and never really be a great musician, and it's sometimes there's no rhyme or reason to it, but um, it was much more of a kind of personal journey, and then the music was quite easy.
Okay, that makes sense. Did you write as many songs that are on the album, or is it that you pared down 30 or 40 songs into what we hear on the album?
I think there was maybe 14, 15 songs.
Okay, so one or two
Yeah,
Japanese bonus tracks set aside.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I again, I like to do things. It was quite different to vaccines. I quite like to do things slowly.
Hmm.
And if I know something's really good, then it takes me a minute to know that it's really good. And I'm not really, not that this is vaccines, but I'm not really interested in that kind of, let's just throw as many things as we can at it and something will be something we can utilize. Or, I mean, and there's a lot to that for sure. Um, but no, I just felt like those were the right songs. I knew how many songs I wanted on the album. I knew the kind of rough order and the rough like journey of the record.
Hmm.
And then the difficult part was like having a patience to make sure that it was made the way that it was meant to be made, you know?
Right. Sonic
Like,
Bloom, love the music video. Was the music video something that took weeks to make?
oh, I think it took the animator a bit longer than that. Yeah.
So it's the kind of thing, sorry to interrupt you. It's the kind of thing where you knew, hey, this song is really special. This is going to take a really long time, and you trusted the animator to have the music before everyone else did.
Yeah, I mean, Manuel has done most of or done all the animation for scenarios, and I want to keep working with him, and I want to do stuff for a live show with him. Like, I also really believe in a kind of creative family.
Hmm.
And again, I mean, a lot of the scenario stuff has been things that obviously I learned from vaccines and learned on the journey and things that I would have done differently. And I feel like if you assimilate like a really good team, like a creative family, then it makes sense to stick with people, you know.
Yeah.
And you can continue, you can grow together, you keep growing together instead of starting fresh every 2 years with a new team. And
Yeah,
yeah,
you're doing the exact opposite of, say, Tom Cruise, where supposedly Tom Cruise doesn't work with the same director twice. That's kind of like this checklist thing where he goes, okay, I worked with him, let's work with him or her, and then him or her. But for you, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
yeah. I mean, obviously the easiest example would be like DiCaprio and Scorsese or something. Not for the scenarios, but you know what I mean? Like
Right.
they've got understanding, they really can work each other out, and they probably make better films as they go.
Sure. So in this case, how long has this album been actually done for?
Well, we started recording it in August 2021,
Wow.
finished recording it in August 2022. So I guess it's been done for what, like 9 months to this date.
So having an album done for that long, does that mean that you've already started thinking about another album or EP?
Oh yeah, but I had to like put the brakes on as soon as, before I'd even finished the first one. I thought, oh, I know exactly what I want the second one to sound like. It will sound like this. Let's finish it in like 2 months. But that comes back to what I was saying at the beginning of the conversation. The game is trying to make sure that your ego or your fears or your impatience or any of the other things that don't really serve you don't become the thing that's in charge.
Right.
I know what I want the new album to sound like, but I know if I did it in a rush, like I wouldn't pull it off, or it wouldn't be right. And not that I'm the one that's pulling it off, but I got massively into this salsa singer called Hector Lavoe.
Mm-hmm.
Someone like, and I found often like I hear the best music not when I'm like, I never troll Spotify or troll. I never do that. I was in a boxing gym in Mexico City, and we were training to salsa, and I heard this song from the album El Cantante, which is like
The singer, yeah.
Yeah, and it like to me, it's like the salsa version of Pet Sounds or something. It is a genius album, and that's been one of the really great joys of this like chapter of my musical career. Is Hector Lavoe on that album is as good as Brian Wilson. You know, Juan Gabriel is as good as the Beatles. You know, when they're at their finest, but they're completely new discoveries for me.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought I'd kind of heard the best music, and I hadn't, you know. It's like very humbling.
Yeah.
It's just incredible. Like, and if anyone hasn't heard that record, El Cantante, I think, you know, I really recommend it. It's genius.
You raise a really, really good point, and that's something I only realized or thought about a couple of years ago, which is that when you grow up reading the American, British, and Canadian publications, you're used to hearing Beatles, Stones, like those over and over and over again. But who were the Beatles of Poland? Who were the Beatles of Portugal? Every country had their original rock stars that inspired people, whether or not they took anything from the Beatles and the Stones. So there's this never-ending quest for finding out about musical history.
Yeah, yeah. Even though I think they're objectively great, all these people I mentioned, I do think primarily it's a subjective thing. So, you know, I'm not very what's the right word? Like my brother back in the day in the horrors, and those guys, they're really just obsessed with like who can find this album and who's this and what year was it made, and I'm just not really very interested. But these certain records really, really speak to me.
Cool.
So for me, that's a good indicator. It's like that's what I should be moving towards, you know?
So Freddie is a work in progress as a human being and an artist. That's what I'm hearing.
Oh, yeah. Who isn't? Yeah, it's interesting, man. Like growing up in a successful rock band, essentially that's what I was a teenager, and then vaccines kicked off, and then it's 12 years later. It's amazing how many kind of life skills you don't develop.
Well, yeah, I mean, when you're on the road like that and you have handlers, it's not like they go, here's how you balance a checkbook, or, you know,
Exactly.
here's make sure you call the people at home every, you know, couple of days. No, they don't teach you that.
No. I mean, and why should they? But it's a very unique position to be in.
Yeah.
And it's a unique position to elected yourself to come out of as well.
Well said.
Yeah, there's like one way out of it where it just like falls apart, another way where you choose to leave. And yeah, I know this is what I signed up for, but it is, you know, it's interesting sometimes. I mean, I'm used to like a head of a lot of adrenaline.
Right.
Where are we going this weekend, next weekend, the weekend after that? We're going away for 2 months, we're going away for 2 weeks, we're doing this, you know. So it's really interesting to be encountering the challenges of normal life, you know.
Yeah. Well, hey, back to your album, back to Answer Machine. How far ahead are you looking in terms of touring? Like, will we see you on the road in support of the album? Because I know that the configuration of the band has changed a few times.
Yeah, well, so the Scenarios is kind of like a loose collective.
Mm-hmm.
So there's musicians in England and musicians in Mexico. I think we booked a festival in June in Mexico City. So I want to put some shows around that. And we're booking a tour in July in the UK. That's the festivals in August. And I'd like to go back to Mexico for the festivals in the autumn if that happens. And I don't know, man, like, but it doesn't feel like what I've signed up for with Scenarios is the same thing as Vaccines was. Because that was obviously like an incredible gift and not available to like everyone, right?
Right.
So that's one aspect of it, but also, I don't know, in a Tom Cruise manner, like I'm not that interested in doing the same thing again.
I hear you. I think a lot of bands with the success that you've had kind of do that thing where they do the traditional machine, then they take 5 to 10 years off of it, then they come back and they do a modified version of that, and they become, we in the States call that weekend warriors, where it's kind of, you got the Friday gig, the Saturday gig, you fly home on the Sunday, then on the Thursday night or the Friday morning, you fly out, you do those 2 gigs, you come back. It becomes almost like a day job like that, where it's sort of a part-time job. You're a real band, but you're not out for 4 weeks.
We used to call it the mortgage tours.
So now Weekend Warriors, mortgage touring.
You see like the kind of bands that are big in the 90s, and they go out and they play like some medium-sized festivals. And actually, I'm like, fair play. What a great way to make a living. You know?
Yeah. Oh, totally. And then the other element is that I love about the whole thing is when all those bands band together. So they have their mini festival reunions every weekend. It's like a barbecue every weekend, and then a normal life existence in the midday or the midweek rather.
Yeah, exactly. Like, yeah. Like Sleater Kinney go out with like Mercury Rev and all like the Dave Fridman bands.
Yeah, all the Dave. So do you know Longwave, by the way? That's another Dave Fridman band. The singer of Longwave does the theme song to my show.
Oh, really? No, I don't. I know Dave well and his son Mike, but I don't like. Actually, Mike helped me out with Answer Machine. He was one of the like first guys to do something. But no, I think that's a kind of amazing way to make it, and also so civilized. I think some of the most civilized touring in the world must be like Wilco.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, it gives you hope that you say in 10 years you'll do a tour of you, Andy Bell of Oasis and Ride. Like you could just put together your summer camp, dream camp thing going on. And like, and we'll get one guy from Mercury Rev, and then we'll all come out as the encore and do Yellow Submarine or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. And all your fans like older and like will love buying your merch.
Yeah.
I've been watching like Mudhoney at this festival we played in like a Palazzo in Italy or something, and he was like sipping a really big glass of like Chardonnay on stage. You know, he had this like big chilled glass of white wine on his amp.
Yeah.
I don't know. I guess I was probably quite self-righteous at that point. You know, what is this? But Do you know what?
Oh,
Fuck it.
well, his day job is he runs the Sub Pop warehouse. I assume you're talking about Mark Arm. So his day
Yeah.
job is that. And then on weekends, he's in Italy or Tulsa, Oklahoma, or something like that, doing the mortgage tours. So I think if it's go for Mudhoney, I think that maybe in 5 to 10 years, you're going to be doing that too. But in the meantime, the scenarios are
Well,
great. You should be really proud of this record because it's craft, yet it's commercial. That's a compliment.
well, thank you very much. Yeah, it's been interesting for me because that's how I play guitar. That's probably how I've always played guitar, like out of the confines of Vaccines. And so it's nice to be heard for sure. I think one of the things I'm really interested to do, I guess Scenarios marks like a beginning of a new musical chapter for me.
Yeah.
But in like a Wilco sense, like a Nels Klein or who's like an amazing player. But I'd be really interested to see if this record like speaks to certain people and actually I'd love to play for some other people. Like I found that like a really interesting like unexplored avenue for me to, you know, like Richard Hawley used to sit in with like Pulp, and I think it's a really, I guess that would be a bit of a challenge, you know.
Hey, it sounds like your career is rooted in going, I did that already. What's challenging?
Yeah, I'm Tom Cruise. Damn it!
You're
Damn
the.
it, I don't want to be Tom Cruise.
Well,
He must be the most successful person in the world that like no one wants to be.
I think you're right about that because people would want to be McCartney. People would want to be Scorsese. People would want to be DiCaprio, but nobody wants to be Tom Cruise.
No one wants to be Tom Cruise with like a kind of Scientology like dog leash and a kind of his like enthusiasm and his like terrible clothes.
Well,
He's like a really nice guy.
He's supposed to be the nicest, but this one thing super bothered me about Tom Cruise as a big music person. He did a podcast, I think it was Chris Hardwick's podcast 7 years ago, something like that. And Chris Hardwick goes, so I understand you're a big music fan. Who are some of your favorite bands? And he goes, I like all kinds of music. Like he felt that by saying which artists he liked, that would divide people and be such a detrimental thing to his career by saying which bands he likes. That immediate turnoff.
Maybe, yeah, it's so interesting. I mean, everyone just says Beatles, don't they?
Everyone says Beatles at a certain age. And then if you're a younger age, you have to say Kendrick Lamar to show that you like certain music. But if you were over a certain age, you'd probably say Van Halen.
I know this guy who like interviewed Putin like, years ago.
What?
And he was like,
you know Steven Seagal?
No. He's this portrait photographer called Platon.
Okay.
He was trying to get him to. It was a really interesting story because he was trying to get him to open up because he's surrounded by his bodyguards and cronies and everything. And he's like, I like the Beatles, you know. And they were having a joke. He did this portrait, and it was quite an interesting story because he was supposed to be showing his it became one of the weapons against Putin because he just looked so devoid of any kind of love.
You mean basic? He looked like a basic bitch.
He looked like a kind of
women would say.
He looked like a hateful person, like a kind of hateful, cold, stone cold person, you know, which is probably quite accurate.
Well, I'm glad your friend is still alive. Wait, is your friend still alive?
He is.
Okay, cool. Well, the last question I have for you, the human being, I couldn't figure this out. What was the band that made you want to start playing music? And I said because you got started super young. And if I think about the age that you really made it, and what I was listening to when I was that age, I was listening to terrible music.
Well, when I was really young, I started with classic rock.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's really hard. I don't think I've ever really shaken that on some level.
Oh, same here. You're talking to a guy who's writing a book about David Lee Roth from Van Halen right now, so you're not offending me.
No, I mean like pre-Van Halen. I mean like Jimi Hendrix and
Sure.
Zeppelin and all the bands that Van Halen were listening to.
Yeah.
Like that was my kind of thing. And also like my age, my dad is 70 this year, so he was a teenager in the 70s. So Clapton and Hendrix and Zeppelin and Black Sabbath are like they're gods to my parents, my dad. So that's the music that was around. And then I had a pretty good start because that stuff's amazing, obviously. And then like brief detour into like Pokemon soundtrack, but probably a little bit embarrassingly older age than you might think. And then
No, that usually had really good guitar work and really good high-end vocals. Those were all 80s metal people finding a second job. So you were
yeah. And then I had my kind of self-righteous phase of like only love the albums Brian Eno made that no one's ever heard.
Right.
And Glenn Branca records, and when I started reading books about sonic youth and reading about this stuff and becoming obsessed about it. But then I kind of moved out of that, and I think a lot of the most popular music, not these days, but a lot of the most popular music, the music that's propagated through time, not the most popular music that's come out now, because I think most of that people won't remember, but the stuff that has lasted for a reason. And you know, I would be hard pushed to like beat Band of Gypsies as like some of the best music ever made,
right?
Or Giant Steps, or you know, I'm not like, have you heard this record that no one's ever heard? It's like, well, you know,
well, it sounds like a full circle kind of thing, where what you liked when you were 12, you eventually come back to 25, 30, somewhere around there. It's all full circle. And then whatever you liked when you were college age, that's what you will forever associate with your college years. So even if it was bad, you come back to it. So sounds like full circle for you.
Well, I've realized that you're wearing a Weezer t-shirt, and I like Weezer, but like I think I take music, I've realized in this conversation, like deadly seriously, even though I wouldn't call myself, I'm not like a record store snob, but that Coltrane or Hendrix or James Brown or when John Frusciante plays guitar, or you know, when River Phoenix, no, what's his name? Sorry, not Rivers Cuomo.
Yeah.
Rivers Cuomo plays guitar. It's those like moments of like brilliance and spirituality in music that I take deadly seriously, and I hear it in Mozart, or you hear it in Rachmaninoff, or in Elliott Smith, or in whatever, you know. But actually, I'll hear it in moments of. It's not like one person I have on my wall, you know. I have Hendrix actually and Muhammad Ali, but so it's more like those moments of like major connection which some of the great artists have made, and some like Hendrix made it a lot. Mm-hmm. And that's what music is to me. It's that kind of piercing the disconnect between, you know, earth and heaven, and there's that spiritual pocket.
I hear you. You, like me, you take entertainment way too seriously. For a lot of people, like, that's fun, that's in the background, and for you, it's a lifestyle. You make friendships based on what they listen to.
Yeah, well, I used to, for sure. I think it's really reflective of what people's belief systems are. You know, I believe music is a divine thing, and so how people treat something that's divine, it says a lot about them, I guess. But then you also see like the kind of Amadeus complex, where you do see people who make incredible music who are like, yeah, it's cool, man. Anyway, let's go to the pub. You're like, what? Why?
Hey, I'm gonna end this with a compliment. Freddie, Great album, but the human being behind the album is also super compelling. So it's really been great to hear where the ideas come from, who the human being is. And you're not just a dude who plays guitar and sings. There's a lot of thought and art and passion behind this. And hopefully more people catch on to that over time and they realize that's not just a dude with hit songs, you know?
Oh, yeah, thanks. Well, I'll try and be this nice to my wife now.
Try and succeed, man.
Yeah. Okay, man. Bless you. Thank you for talking to me.
Paltrocast.